but UCLA playing much better football in recent weeks. We've had a chance to see them the last 2 weekends where I've really checked out on UCLA. As you can imagine, I'm trying to watch the best teams play and the biggest matchups, but they've been on the last 2 Friday nights against Washington and Iowa. So I have been able to watch them start to finish. And I got to say, for a situation in which DeShaun Foster looked completely outmatched and in over his head for the first part of the season, they've rallied rather well and have acquitted themselves in recent weeks. They came into the Iowa game last in the Big Ten in rushing yardage per game, and they got Harden fired up, and he trampled the Hawkeyes, and they won that game despite some red zone goal line mistakes and interceptions and fumbles that cost them a lot of points. The Washington game was a game that they could have won, but they were outclassed, and just a little bit better were the Huskies on that night. So, this is not a horrendous football team. It's a solid defensive team that really can defend the run in particular. And Ethan Garbers is pedestrian, but, he's got some mobility. He's a bit of a gamer. And so the Bruins come in having a 4-game winning streak snapped by the Huskies in Seattle last weekend. So they've got to win the final 2 to get some extra bowl practices themselves and play an extra game to try to win that 7th game, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, so hey, in September, I was looking at UCLA's schedule and thinking, this could be 2-10. It might even be 1-11. And so DeShaun Foster has greatly exceeded my expectations, done a very impressive job. You know what? I mean, I'm not saying he's going to become another version of Kenny Dillingham, but I will make the parallel that, ASU was 3-9 last year, but was totally shredded by injuries to the offensive line. And so that was I just highlight this because the win-loss record was not reflective at all of how well the coaching staff performed. And so I'm not predicting that DeShaun Foster is going to become the next Kenny Dillingham, but I will only say that UCLA having a losing record does in no way reflect just how great a job DeShaun Foster has done. He gets an A. He gets an A for what he's doing with this team, because I thought that 2-10 seemed like a likely outcome, and UCLA almost got a 5th win, and could end the season 5-7 relative to expectations. DeShaun Foster has greatly exceeded them. I was very skeptical in September, so I just have to tip the cap to him. And you noted correctly, this is a defensive team. This is a very scrappy defense, and with the mediocre level of quarterback play in the Big Ten, that's what UCLA has been able to take advantage of. Their defense is a ball hawking defense. They get after it. They close on the ball. They fly to the ball very consistently. They are well coached on that side, so there hasn't been much of a drop off from Danton Lynn leaving the program. The UCLA, it knows who and what it is. It knows its identity. Not going to play shootouts. You're not going to play high scoring games. So UCLA gets into these fist fights and hasn't won all of them, but has won some of them and has been consistently competitive. And because the offense is mediocre and has been mistake prone, also the offensive line has gotten chewed up by injuries. So there's so many limitations still on offense. The fact that the defense has been able to be so good and this team has been able to achieve what it has, it's really very impressive. This is a coaching staff that has been very much in touch with reality, knowing what it can and can't do. That's part of a well-lived life, right? Know your limitations, know what you're capable of, be realistic. Aspirational, but still be realistic within the high aspirations that you have. This has been a mature performance from UCLA's coaching staff, and it'll be interesting to see if UCLA, which bullied USC a year ago with its defense, that to me is the main. That to me is what is likely to decide the game, because I have confidence in Danton Lynn to lock up Ethan Garbers and benefit from USC has an injury-riddled defensive line. Well, UCLA has an injury-riddled offensive line. So those things are going to cancel each other out. and I think USC's defense can hold the fort. It's going to be USC's offense versus UCLA's defense. Does Jaden Mayava exhibit better ball security? Can the USC offensive line be a little more consistent? Because against Nebraska, it's pretty much been the same thing, that USC's offensive line plays about 2, maybe 2.5 really good quarters, but there's 15 to 20 minutes per game when USC's offensive line is getting outplayed. So that was the first quarter against Nebraska. Nebraska was firing off the ball, getting home on the pass rush. Mayava got hit a few times as he was throwing the ball, was lucky to not have more interceptions than he did. So, it's going to be interesting. Can USC's offensive line raise that bar? Can USC's offensive line? I would love 4 complete quarters, but I've been saying this so often during the season. I would just love a game in which USC's offensive line played 3 complete high-quality quarters. It has not been able to go that high, be that good many times this season, like the Utah State game and the Rutgers game. Those were games in which I think USC's offensive line played a complete game. But in all the other games, there were at least 20 minutes, a little bit more than a full quarter, in which the USC offensive line didn't play as well as it could have or should have. If USC can play 3 complete quarters on the offensive line in this game, and the one bad quarter is not a complete disaster, Trojan should win.
Preseason perceptions and expectations linger. I'm guessing that if you would ask the average college football fan who should win this game, they wouldn't even think twice about it. And certainly our audience here, I'm sure, is 90-some% thinking that USC just wins this game, because I've heard all sorts of comments out there in our various chats and so forth that, okay, well, we're moving on to Notre Dame. We'll win this one. And then we think we can challenge Notre Dame. But Vegas has this as a 4.5-point game. This is no walkover in regards to the way these teams have been playing. They come at it in a from 2 very different places, but USC should win this game. I am right there with you from a talent standpoint. Yes, they should win this game. However, UCLA's they're playing hard, and they're playing for their coach, and they're playing for themselves, and they're a really unified team. Not that USC's not, having won this game against Nebraska, but UCLA's scrappy. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and by the way, just on the graphic here, it's 7:30 Pacific. It's a late game.
That's my issue there.
No problem. Just want to be clear for everyone who's seeing this. It's a 7:30 Pacific kick. Should mention, just on that note, that Saturday is a day, if you are a USC or a Notre Dame sports fan, just keep it on NBC, because you have USC Notre Dame women's basketball at 4 Eastern. Then you have Notre Dame Army at Yankee Stadium at 7 Eastern on NBC. And then this game at 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific on NBC. So an amazing USC Notre Dame flavored sports triple header. Just an amazing afternoon of sports if you are a Trojan or a member of the Fighting Irish. So just keep it on NBC. In terms of the game and the 4.5-point spread, I was on record as saying we didn't do a show last week, but to anybody who asked me, I said I like Nebraska plus the 7.5, and was on the right side of that bet for pretty much the whole game until the end, breaks of the game. But fundamentally, that game was close. That game was tight, and USC has not shown consistently that it can rise above. And USC is below 500 against the spread this season. So if you're just looking at the whole trajectory of the year, like you're saying, USC does not cover spreads most of the time. The other point that I would make is that Jaden Mayava is probably going to make at least one turnover. I mean, if you're saying, Jaden Mayava is not going to commit a single turnover against a really good ball hawking, aggressive UCLA defense. The USC offensive line is going to stonewall UCLA's defensive line the whole game. I wouldn't say that. Like, I don't think those are things are likely to happen. So if you assume that Jaden Mayava is going to commit at least one turnover, and if you assume that that one turnover or perhaps other mistakes that aren't turnovers but still, hurt USC in terms of leaving points on the field, or giving up a possession that UCLA is able to turn into a short field. If you assume that Mayava is still going to make a few notable mistakes, then UCLA plus the 4.5 would be the side that I'm slightly leaning to. But I would pass on this game, to be honest. I would pass on this game. I wouldn't lay a finger on it. UCLA would be my lean, but USC is obviously a much more talented team. It has a much more talented offense. It has a much higher ceiling. Like, USC could play an average game and win this by 7, 24-17, 27-20, 31-24. It would be utterly unsurprising. So if you put a gun to my head, I'm leaning UCLA. But really, part of the wisdom of sports betting, for those who dare to enter into it, is that you don't have to bet on everything, and you shouldn't bet on everything. And part of having a fat bankroll means you don't lose a few $100s on a game that you had no business betting on in the first place. Just pocket that money and devote it for a game where you see like a great opportunity. So that's the betting angle here at the Voice of College Football on USC UCLA.
Absolutely. And Matt supplies his 12-pack of picks for us here at the Voice of College Football every week, and is doing very fine with his picks. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but tearing it up pretty well. And yes, it's human psyche that causes most people to think, oh, it's a big game. So we know technically by the standings, this is not a big game, but it's a big rivalry game. There's a lot made of it. So, I want to bet that's why so much money's laid on the Super Bowl. There's no great betting advantage just because it's the Super Bowl. That you should leave the opportunity, if you're a smart investor, on the betting horizon, if there is such a thing, that the Thursday afternoon Pirates Brewers game, you can put more money on that than you can the Super. That the weight of the game has nothing to do with the betting opportunity. So that shouldn't have anything to do with the amount of money or your propensity to go wager the size of the game, unless you're just throwing out $20 just because you want to, and it's a NFC championship game, so you just want to do it, or throw it on your favorite team. That's a different deal.